My name is Lauren Pounds, and I am the founder of Seraphaya Spiritual Center. It is a church that serves ayahuasca as its sacrament. I also am the founder of Yoga Plants Thoughts, which is a yoga integration coaching business that also is very much, we work our retreats together. What started my journey to all of this was food as medicine and plant food as medicine. I was not well myself, but I was actually in a relationship with a disabled veteran, 2013 to 2018. And we went through a lot, which taught me food as medicine. And I started growing my own food and I started connecting to the land. We lived off grid, partially off grid. We had some things, but we didn't have indoor bathroom. I grew 3,000 square feet of organic food. Just learning through trying to become sustainable and healing through that made sense to me, what we put in our body. And then from there, it went into deep meditation, into Ashtanga yoga, into other practices, into understanding my own physical diagnoses. So it was physical health that really opened me up and learning how to navigate that. But once my body became clean, awarenesses started coming in. And then really at the end of, not the end because I'm always on it, but after all of that, after I cleaned my body, I developed my practices. I had a coaching business already, was learning about psychedelics, had dabbled with some psilocybin a little bit, understood microdosing to a degree, but it was after all of that I really got into plant medicine. I have celiac disease, but it was messing with everything. But my former partner really was the catalyst. She had myoclonic jerks of seizure condition. She had PTSD from, things that had happened in her 18 months in Iraq. She had, severe digestive issues. And she was the catalyst to it all. And through learning to be able to care for her better, it brought awarenesses into mine. But mine wasn't really screaming the loudest. It was just kind of after that, then I was like, oh, there's also some things going on with me, and let me look at that. So for me, it was celiac, but I actually had already, when I found out my physical ailment, I was already plant-based. And so it was like cutting out the gluten. And then everything was like, oh, we're good now. And so for me, it was much simpler, but my digestive was absolutely a huge part of what was going on with me mentally. And that was really the first connection I ever made with my body's health and my mind's health was really understanding her disorders, and then learning them within myself, and then, research on the gut, the biome, and how, all those things. And so, yeah, for me, once I got to that, the physical was pretty easy for me, in comparison to what I know a lot of people deal with. That same relationship, I researched all the practical things, and I would say I spent about 8 hours a day researching all of the practical things about growing food and healing through food. And, and she was busy studying DMT, the spirit molecule. And so she was bringing in all of these other awarenesses and the energy work and the healing. And she didn't have the time for the practical, but I did. And so she was learning all of this at the same time. So it was kind of in my ear. And I had a cousin who was an addict at the time, and I am a recovering addict, but I was already clean from, the dangerous substances. I still smoked cigarettes at the time. So, I don't know, first date. But I had a cousin who was on a very big substance abuse. And we had learned about ayahuasca and had brought it to that cousin who we were helping at the time with Rick Simpson oil. Because I did work in cannabis for a while and things like that. And so started researching it to help my cousin, who still has never sat with the sacrament, but is clean. So, all is perfect in the world. And so that kind of put it in my ear. And then years later, when we separated, I moved from 100 and something acres in Missouri to Orlando, Florida. And, SoulQuest was right there. And so I had a coaching business. And I had clients that were like, hey, we want to do ayahuasca, husband and wife. And I was like, cool, I'd be into that. And so weird, because I never drank ayahuasca before, but they felt more comfortable with me going with them. And so we all went together, and it was a single night ceremony on a Thursday night at SoulQuest. And I met ayahuasca for the first time. And I have to tell you that I am still living very much the unfolding of what she showed me that day in 2019. And there are things that when you sit in a ceremony, sometimes so many things come through that you don't understand even what they mean. And so still today, I see things or, in random moments that are like, oh, she showed me that, but I couldn't understand it until now, and 7 years later and a lot of journeys later, but there's still times I'm like, oh, my first journey showed me that. Oh, my second journey. Oh, that one journey. Because it's a lot for the human to process all at once. And so we take the time to process it. And years later, there's still, yes, you're still learning to embody it, but sometimes you're still like, oh, yeah, that. The split of SoulQuest, I was a facilitator and an integration coach and yoga teacher at SoulQuest. And when SoulQuest closed, there was a lot of different churches that were created and founded, and mine was one of them. To keep it pretty simple is I'm here to serve the medicine, and she was giving me the wisdom the year before SoulQuest closed, was kind of like the pieces were already being put in place, and it was just kind of following those pieces, the little breadcrumbs that she leaves. So, for me, it's very go take your dogs for more walks. Like those are the types of homework she gives me, but in those walks is what I learn all the things that she wants to tell me kind of thing. And so in the unfolding of, just the little assignments she gives me, here we are. So we kind of are creating a new model in real time that isn't very common, or I haven't seen it at all in the United States yet. And we have our so we originally did weekend retreats that were very similar to what you see in the United States. But we have created a model where they are week-long retreats, and they are full-on yoga retreats that include 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, and they include trauma-informed workshops led by a therapist, and they kind of include all of the aspects, including the energy, the science, the ceremony. And so for those who are interested in sitting with Seraphia personally, it's really about preparation and being ready to create a relationship with yourself and, be grounded in the process that is this process. I personally hold very trauma-informed containers and am geared towards using the sacrament to bring the spiritual wisdom so that we can learn how to heal the human and to walk in more alignment with ourselves in, living a life of wellness. And there are other, ceremonies that are, it's community and it's celebration and it's, so I don't know if there's a commonality amongst, the totality. I think there are many different ways to experience, and our approach specifically is using it as a catalyst for healing. And so a lot of the people who are seeking our experiences are those who are really diving deep in all of the aspects of healing, not just the relationship to plant medicine. I embody what I do. And I think that the person holding the space, their embodiment is everything. And it doesn't matter what you're embodying as long as you're embodying what you do. And I embody what I share. I finally believe in myself. I finally know my worth. I see the value that I bring to the spaces. I'm no longer afraid to have all of my parts be seen, and the work that I took to get here and the struggles and the messes. I believe I'm confident in myself. I'm not afraid of my shadow. I'm not afraid of what's behind me. I'm not afraid of what's in front of me. And I am fully present in what I'm doing and where I'm leading from for the first time in my life. And I'm in my 40s. Well, you can find me in almost all of the spaces. I definitely am visible on social media through plant medicine communities, including the Plant Medicine Path. You can find me there. You can find me on my website, seraphaya.org, yogaplants.com, Lauren Pounds, in any search in any social media. Seraphaya or Yoga Plants Thoughts on it. Like I'm visible. I think that it's really important that we create safety around these conversations. A lot of the work that I'm doing is bridging, therapists, psychotherapists, and those who study the psychology behind things. And I think it's just really important that we speak to bring this more mainstream, because having underground conversations creates spaces that maybe aren't always as safe. And so I think the bigger thing for all of this is thank you, because these conversations should be normalized. And if they are, how much better would we all be?